Yesterday, the Ontario government announced that it would be tabling this year's budget on March the 24th. The 2021 budget is expected to include a deficit higher than last November's deficit of $38.5 billion as the province still grapples with the pandemic. First, what programs are you expecting to see and what programs are you hoping to see?
The big one that everyone's kind of expecting is broadband. The government's already mentioned it a couple of times. Rural broadband being the big one, especially in northern Ontario and rural areas of the province. And again, it's another big area that was highlighted by the pandemic, that kids in the rural area and people working from home struggled to get online and get access when absolutely necessary. Ontario More Accessible will be throughout that budget, whether it's highlighted in the starts of it is in this one or it continues on in the next budget right before the election.
I think what this government has to do is do what every provincial government has been faced with for many, many years, and that is making the necessary investments in healthcare and in education. I think Ontarians will give the government the benefit of the doubt. We know there's a big deficit. We know there's a big debt. Now is not the time to be nitpicking and worrying about the deficit. Now is not the time. Investments, education, long-term care, broadband, healthcare. That's what this government needs to do.
And I agree with you. I think we're going to see lots of expenditures to try to get back to some degree of normality after all of this. And that the broadband piece is something that people that they know that vote for them, want, need. How do you keep people in rural communities? They're hearing it from wardens. They're hearing it from mayors. They're hearing it from constituents. They don't want to have their children necessarily move to Toronto to find a job that pays them a living wage. Yeah. So, there's a lot of rationale behind these investments. And I think as much as we want to get back to a world that is what it was pre-COVID, there are a lot of takeaways from this that can make, the next generation and the generations that are just getting to the workforce now operate in a way that they're comfortable, and that's with technology in their hands.
I've been very, very impressed over the past few weeks with the Ford government, particularly Lisa MacLeod, for the ongoing investments in Ontario's cultural industries. And this is an area that has been completely wiped out by COVID, but I'm so pleased that Ontario is continuing to invest in the music industry, in our museums, in all the many cultural aspects of Ontario, and it includes, Matt, as well as Franco-Ontarian organizations.
There will be some measures in this budget building upon measures contained in the fall economic statement and other budgets for Francophones to keep full steam ahead on helping that community get out of the problems created by COVID. I'll segue into Quebec. It's projected that the Quebec budget, which will be tabled the following day, that in Ontario's on March 25th, and the local government has decided not to raise taxes and not to cut services, as this is the wrong time in their estimations to do it, but there will be, quote unquote, a day of reckoning at some point.
Ontario and the federal government have been cooperating very closely during the pandemic, but this has, of course, not always been the case. Do you think that this close relationship will be maintained going forward, or do you think that that is doomed to drift apart again?
Federal election is imminent. It's just a matter of when they table that budget. There's a lot of stuff going on. Vaccines were slow to roll out, and so I think they have a lot to divert attention from. And if you can pick on Premier Ford again, and he's the lightning rod, then unfortunately, those buddy press conferences and statements of gratitude between Premier Ford and Minister Freeland are going to be few and far between.
I would offer up that it's very hard for the federal government to make the opposition the bad guys in the context of an election, because they've barely been participatory as far as allowing everyone to be active in Parliament and hold the government to account. They haven't tabled the budget that an opposition could criticize them on in 2 years. So if not the provinces, then who, right? That's the real question. And I guess we'll watch with bated breath.
Well, no, it'll be a situation. Look, Doug Ford's a conservative, Aaron O'Toole's a conservative, and they won't make the distinction between the province and the federal party, the provincial and the federal party. So it will be, well, all conservatives are bad. We are good.